He stood frozen at the hospital door, breath trembling, heart pounding against his chest like it wanted to escape. Just beyond the glass, she was there, the woman he replaced, the one he swore he'd forgotten. Her hair was shorter now, her face pale but peaceful, and in her arms, two tiny babies, sleeping like angels. Ethan Ward, the ruthless millionaire CEO, who once believed love was a weakness, felt the ground crumble beneath him. For years, he built an empire, dated models, and convinced himself she'd moved on. But now, watching her cradle their twins, he realized the truth. He didn't replace her. He'd only been running from what he couldn't forget. And as her eyes fluttered open and met his from across the glass, time itself stopped, because in her gaze, he saw everything he'd lost and the family he never knew existed. Ethan Ward had always believed emotions were distractions. He built his empire with iron discipline and sleepless nights, never allowing love to slow him down. When Ava entered his life, gentle, passionate, and stubbornly idealistic, she had been everything he didn't understand yet couldn't resist. She laughed in his sterile boardrooms, challenged his decisions, and, for a time, made him feel human. But love required vulnerability, and vulnerability was something Ethan couldn't afford. When their relationship collided with his ambition, a failed merger, a public scandal, and whispers of favoritism, Ethan chose his image over her heart. He let her walk away, convincing himself that it was for the best. Years passed. Ethan became everything the world envied: powerful, untouchable, perfectly alone. His life was polished and hollow, filled with empty meetings and colder nights. Ava became a distant ache, one he silenced beneath success. Then came the call that changed everything. It was late one evening when his assistant entered the office, voice trembling. "Sir, there's been an accident. The woman's name is Ava." Her name struck like thunder. Ethan rose so quickly his chair toppled. For a moment, the world blurred. "Ava, who?" he demanded, though he already knew the answer. Minutes later, he was in his car. Tires screeching against wet asphalt, city lights bleeding into one another as he sped toward the hospital. Memories collided in his mind, her laughter, her anger, the day she left without looking back. He had never called, never searched, never asked why now. He was too late, or so he feared. When he reached the hospital, the air felt thick, sterile, humming with life and death. Nurses moved quickly, and the sound of heart monitors echoed through white walls. He approached the front desk, voice breaking. "Ava Collins, which room?" The nurse hesitated. "Room 34. "But sir, she's not alone." He frowned. "What do you mean just—" "Go see her," she whispered. He walked down the long hallway, every step heavier than the last. When he reached the door, he saw her fragile but alive, her body bruised but her face still heartbreakingly familiar. His chest tightened as tears he didn't know he could shed filled his eyes. Then he noticed the two tiny bundles beside her bed, two newborns. His world tilted. For the first time in years, Ethan couldn't breathe. He stepped closer, his reflection trembling in the glass window that separated them. The nurse beside him murmured, "They're her twins. She's been asking for someone named Ethan." His knees nearly gave out. He turned toward the nurse, voice raw. She had my children." "I think so," the nurse replied softly. "She never said much, only your name." Inside, Ava stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, hazy from exhaustion, and met his. For a moment, time stopped, two souls frozen between past and present. Her lips parted, whispering the name she had held onto through pain and silence. "Ethan." It wasn't anger or blame in her voice. It was something deeper, something that broke him completely. Ethan pushed open the hospital door slowly, afraid that one sound might shatter the fragile reality before him. The faint smell of antiseptic filled the room, and the soft beeping of machines blended with the rhythmic breathing of the twins. Ava turned her head slightly, her eyes tired but still carrying that same quiet strength that once drew him in. He stood at the edge of her bed, words choking in his throat. "Ava, what happened?" She looked at him for a long moment, then down at the tiny bundles beside her. "You shouldn't be here, Ethan," she whispered. He took a step closer, his hand trembling. "How could I not be? I got the call. I thought you'd—" His voice broke. "I thought you were gone." A faint, weary smile touched her lips. "You thought I was gone a long time ago." The truth in her words cut deeper than any wound. Ethan had abandoned her not in body, but in silence. He'd chosen his empire over her, and in doing so, destroyed the only thing that ever mattered. He glanced at the twins again. "They're mine, aren't they?" Ava's eyes filled with tears. She didn't nod, didn't speak. She simply reached out and touched one of the baby's hand-steamy fingers, curling around her own. Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. His children. The realization hit him like lightning. Years lost, moments missed, memories that would never be made. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Ava looked at him, eyes filled with pain and a quiet kind of dignity. "You made it clear what place I had in your world, Ethan. You said there was no room for love, no room for me." "I never said I didn't love you," he said, desperate now. "You didn't have to." Her tone was calm, but each word sank deep into him. She wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of waiting, of hoping that the man who broke her heart might one day look back. "I tried to tell you once," she continued softly, "but your secretary said you were too busy. You were flying to Paris for that merger. I realized then that your heart was already somewhere else." Ethan's throat burned. He remembered that trip. He remembered ignoring a call, one he dismissed as unimportant. "What about the accident?" he asked after a long silence. She swallowed hard. "I was driving home from the clinic. The twins had just been discharged after a fever. Someone ran a red light." Her voice trembled. "When I woke up, I was here, and then I saw you." He wanted to fall to his knees. The thought of her struggling alone, raising 2 children, carrying the weight of his absence, it was unbearable. "I was a fool," he whispered. "Yes," she said, meeting his eyes, "but fools can still learn." There was no hate in her words, only truth, and somehow, that was worse. Ethan sat down beside her, his hand hovering over the twins' blanket. "What are their names?" She hesitated, a faint light flickering in her tired eyes. "Liam and Lily." He smiled weakly. "Beautiful. They deserved names with hope," she said, "even if their father had none." Ethan reached out and took her hand gently. "I can't change what I did, but let me be part of their lives. Please, Ava, let me make this right." She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You can't undo years of silence, Ethan." "No," he said softly, "but I can start speaking now." The silence that followed was thick with things unsaid. The air between them buzzed with the weight of broken promises and the faint flicker of something still alive. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel like a CEO. He didn't feel powerful or proud. He just felt human, aching, guilty, and desperate for forgiveness. Ava looked at him one last time before sleep took her. "They'll need a father," she whispered. Ethan bowed his head, his hands still holding hers. "And I'll never walk away again." The twins stirred softly, their tiny breaths filling the quiet room. And in that moment, Ethan realized he had everything he ever wanted. Only now, he had to earn it. Days blurred into nights inside the quiet hospital room. The storm outside had long passed, but the storm inside Ethan Ward still raged. Guilt, fear, and a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, he hadn't lost everything. He stayed by Ava's bedside, ignoring every call from the office. His board panicked. Reporters speculated. But for the first time in years, Ethan didn't care about headlines. His world had narrowed down to one hospital room, to sleeping babies, and the woman who once taught him what love really meant. Every morning, he brought flowers, not roses, but daisies. She used to say daisies were honest. They didn't pretend to be anything they weren't. Ava noticed. "You still remember," she whispered one afternoon as sunlight filtered through the blinds. "I remember everything," he replied quietly, "even the day you walked out." Her lips trembled. "You didn't stop me." He took a deep breath, eyes fixed on their twins sleeping nearby. "I thought I was protecting you from me. I didn't want you to see how much I was becoming the man I hated. Cold, ruthless, empty." She sighed, her gaze softening. "You always thought love made you weak." "I was wrong," Ethan said. "Love was the only thing that made me human." For the first time, a small smile flickered across her face, fragile, but real. Over the next few days, Ethan learned the rhythm of fatherhood. He held the twins awkwardly at first, terrified he'd break them. But when Liam wrapped his tiny hand around his finger, something inside Ethan shattered completely. The man who once ruled boardrooms now stood speechless at the miracle of 2 small lives breathing beside him. He sang softly at night, an old tune his mother used to hum before he lost her. Ava watched from her bed, tears slipping silently as she saw the man she once loved finally becoming the father she'd dreamed of for her children. On the 7th day, Ava was discharged. The doctors warned her to rest, to recover slowly. Ethan refused to let her go home alone. Against her protests, he arranged for her and the twins to stay in a private recovery suite, far from the city, surrounded by quiet gardens and sunlight. "I'm not doing this out of guilt," he told her gently. "I'm doing this because I finally understand what I almost lost." Ava hesitated but didn't refuse. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, walls came down. Ethan became a constant presence at feedings, doctor visits, and sleepless nights. He missed meetings, skipped conferences, and ignored investors. The empire he'd once protected with iron will began to run itself without him, and for once, that didn't scare him. One evening, he found Ava sitting by the window, the twins asleep beside her. The fading sunset cast a golden hue around her face. She was quiet, her fingers tracing the edge of the ring he'd once given her, the same ring she'd been holding the night he found her in the ICU. "I never took it off," she said softly. "Even when I wanted to hate you, I couldn't." Ethan stepped closer, his voice breaking. "I don't deserve that kind of love." "No," she agreed, "but maybe you can learn from it." He knelt in front of her, just as he had years ago when he'd first proposed, only this time, there was no audience, no grand gesture, just honesty. "I don't want forgiveness," he said. "I want a chance to build something real for them, for you, for us. I'll spend every day proving that the man who let you go is gone." Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at him, not the powerful CEO the world admired, but the man who finally understood what it meant to stay. The twins stirred, and Ethan reached over, gently placing his hand over theirs. For the first time, it felt right, like the beginning of something that would last. Ava whispered, "You really changed." He smiled faintly. "You're the reason I wanted to." Outside, the city lights flickered in the distance, a world that once defined him, now just background to the family he'd finally found. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by love he thought he'd lost forever, Ethan Ward, the man who once replaced the woman who loved him, realized that life had given him one final chance. This time, he wasn't going to waste it. Sometimes, life doesn't give second chances, but when it does, it tests whether you've truly changed. Ethan Ward had everything: power, money, and control. But the day he found the woman he replaced, holding his twins in a hospital room, his empire meant nothing. Every regret, every mistake, came rushing back, and for the first time, the ruthless millionaire CEO fell to his knees. This is not just a story about love lost and found. It's about redemption, forgiveness, and the courage to face the truth you once ran from. Watch how a man who once chose pride over love learns what it means to be a father, a partner, and a human again. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional, heart-touching stories that remind us. Sometimes, love doesn't end, it just waits for us to come home.